sort of just easy-going, fun-loving sort of guy. Big Blaze, 22 years old, February the 9th, 1941. I got out of high school, man. I've been around about as long as I can remember, man. It just seems like something basic in this life, sort of. Something in there that just doesn't go. Well, anyway, when I was born, my father wanted to call me Aloysius, but my mother had the upper hand, so they just called me Bruce. And threw on Gordon, since that was the family name. And after getting out of high school, I went to college for a semester CCNY. And before I completed, I quit and joined the Army. I was 17, young and wild. And joined the Army, spent 3 years there. Managed to make a year in Korea in the 60 to 61. I kicked Sigmund Rhee out. And from Korea, I came back to the States, Fort Gordon, Georgia. That's when I really got a very good taste of the South down there. Really got out into town and made all the mistakes, sat on the front of the bus and walked into the wrong restaurants and asked for movie tickets and really started to find out what the segregation really meant. And it was sort of really new to me. I mean, I'd experienced it once or twice in New York, but it'd been in the form of, you're a nigger and I'm not a nigger, and you punch me in the nose, anytime they use the magic word. But I didn't, really know, didn't really dig this. All right, they called me a nigger. I know this was supposed to be wrong because I was told it was wrong to be a nigger and called a boy, and I'm supposed to react violently to this. But it got to be a burden being a Negro, so anytime I was called a nigger, I just, passed it off for soldier old man or something like that. I spent about a year in Atlanta, Georgia, where I met Julian Bond and James Foreman and John Lewis and Ivanhoe and a bunch of the other guys that were with the movement, and more or less talked to them, don't buy black, buy guns and things like that. But finally I came around to this nonviolent aspect of the movement, and I got more and more interested, and so I quit school. I was going to I just transferred out of Morris Brown to Clark, and quit school and quit the job I had out at Lockheed Aircraft Corporation and became a field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. To tell you the truth, I could care less about this town of Summer. I don't tend to live here. There's very little here that interests me. I'm not that much interested in the people. But if I'm to become someone, somebody else must be something. I can only find me through finding someone else. Self-seekers seldom find themselves. Human beings, to be able to relate to another human being, to be able to think with another human being, to be able to enter into some sort of relationship with another human being, to be able to see the tree as he sees it. No two men ever see the same tree. I mean, all right, we recognize it's got a bark, out of a woody substance, it must have roots, it must stand up straight, it has leaves, and there's the oxygen, carbon dioxide cycle, and it gives off moisture and this, that, and the other, but the tree. No two men really ever see the same tree, and if I can possibly understand how someone else sees the tree, maybe my own vision becomes a bit clearer. If I can understand how another man thinks, even though his thinking is counter to mine, even though he doesn't quite agree with me, maybe I can come to a little better understanding of how I think, and more important, why I think the way I do. So hence this movement, and hence Selma, Alabama. If I'm to be free in New York, these people must be free down here. I'm tied to them whether I want to or not. And not just by color, by the mere fact that we were all created in this great being's image. He does exist. I mean, not to get on any morality kick of whether God exists or whether he doesn't exist, but for all this orderly chaos to result by pure accident is a little too fantastic to conceive. For all these feelings and emotions, these things that just don't quite fit, that this dissatisfaction that sex and food and drink just doesn't satisfy, this thing that still lurks there and it's charged and it nudges you every so often, it pushes you, it keeps trying to struggle up into you. I believe that's something that lies way outside the being, far, far outside the being. All right, it sounds like straight melodrama, you know what I mean? But it's there, let's face it. This is what causes the whites to react as they do down here. Something else is tugging at them. Something else is trying to get in there. Something else is trying to communicate its way through, and it's a little bit too terrible to recognize. It's a little bit too much to bite off and chew. I'd much rather believe this way. I don't really want to accept this. It's easier for me to go along the way we've been going. Something else is rattling around in their minds. Some other little thing that they can't really put their finger on it. They can't really articulate it. It's the ghost that always lies in the peripheral vision. Every time I try to swing my vision around to focus on it, it always moves behind a boulder or a stump or disappears just over the horizon. But it's there, and it's maddeningly there. And either I must get it or remove it, one or the other. Either I must have it or wipe it out, destroy it. And me with my black skin and my woolly hair personifies this little thing that keeps dodging, ducking out of the way. But the only trouble is I don't dodge and duck. I stand right there. And the only thing they can do now is either close their eyes and ignore the problem. The Negroes here are happy. We got happy race relations here in this state and in this city for more than 100 years. Or either reach out and try to violently crush it down. Throw a bomb in the church. Throw poison candy at children. Use cattle prods on demonstrators and pack them into filthy jails. But it just doesn't work. No matter how happy they say I am, I'm not. No slave can ever be really happy except if the slave just becomes utterly lost. And this is a vile thing. I'm not going to go back to that place. And don't want to take over what the whites have here. I don't want all those ulcers and pains. All I want to do is just exemplify me, just be me. If me wants to kick off the shoes and run through woods, let me do it. If me wants to spout poetry at the moon, let me do it. If me wants to go in here and just sit down and look at the four walls and not bother anybody, then let me do it. And don't tell me I can't because, boy, you're black. Don't tell me I can't because your hair is woolly or your eyes are slanted or your lips are too thick or your nose is too big. That's all I want. I don't necessarily want to sit next to a white person on the bus. And not, whites smell a little bit too sometimes when they don't bathe. You understand what I mean? I don't necessarily want to work next beside whites because I'll tell you the truth, whites are lazier than we are. We've got to work to make that little bit of money that we're going to have. You people don't have to. You got this big union to take care of you and everything, you got Social Security to pay you off. We're not really making enough to make ends meet as is. And so we really got to slave hard if we want to go down to the Splo House or the Shine House, to get a little drink and then run around to the other houses to have a little fun here and there also. We got to really work. We can't afford to be lazy. The only reason we're moving slow is because at the end of the day, if you work a 16-hour day out here in some of these cotton fields I've seen out here pulling garbage on some of these trucks, you'd move a bit slow too at the end of a 16-hour day. At least I know I would. So the whites are now confronted with this. And this is a general thing throughout the entire movement, whether you take it from Danville, Virginia, all the way down to Little Rock, Arkansas. The human being is still the same. The human being that's caught up in these situations, though his method of expression might be different, but what motivates him to this expression is still the same. The thing inside is still the same, whether it's Governor Orville Forbes closing the schools and having the National Guard have to open them again, or whether it's Prince Edward County just shutting the schools down entirely and saying we give up the public school system. The method of expression is different, granted, but what motivates this expression is the same. We don't want them niggers around us. Because to face that black man, I've got to face myself. To face what I've inflicted on him. To face the castrations, the lynchings, the beatings, the Klan ridings. To face coming in there and taking his women and just treating them like dirt. To face this. Not that he's going to react and do the same thing to me, but that I could do this to a human being. That I could actually call myself a Christian, a civilized man, and be like this to a fellow man. This is a little bit too much for anybody to swallow. And there's no excuse to fall back on. We didn't have any war or fight with you to cause you to put us down like this. We didn't have any big rebellions or uprisings or want to change your way of life so radically to make you do this. It was your own greed and cheap labor that made you want to do this. It was you selling yourself out for a buck and King Cotton that made you take a human being and mutilate him. Now, this is just a plain, simple fact. I can't see anything else for it. I don't see why else you need slaves except to work. I don't think you just want slaves just standing around just to say, I got slaves. I mean, this has been impractical. You got to feed them, you got to stick them in a house someplace. So you must want something out of a slave. You want his labor. He is the object upon which you vent your anger and your lust. He provides psychological crutches to you in that way, and he provides economic crutches to you in the other way. He provides military crutches to you if you can brainwash him enough to fight for you. So this is the real reason. Now you've done this to human beings. You've violated the law of God by doing it. You've violated the law of man by doing it, and now you must pay. But even then you're getting off light, in that you don't have to pay physically. You're getting off light, but you're getting off really heavy, in that you have to pay by a spiritual awakening. You have to pay by a mental awakening. And this is sometimes a very hard price to pay. Now, how is all this applicable here in Selma, Alabama? Well, we tried street demonstrations. Street demonstrations were put down quickly and harshly. Al Lingo moved in with his cattle prods. The sheriff deputized 300 men, a great big posse now. They filled the county jails. They filled the city jails. The trials, naturally, were all miscarriages of justice. So now we're leaning away from these street demonstrations. Now we're starting to reach out and grasp at the vote. He actually did us a favor. The white power structure here, this is a term that's been misused, I realize that, but it's the best term I can think of at the moment. The white power structure actually did us a favor by forcing us out of the streets, back into our homes and back into our churches, thinking that we'd go back to this place. We can't go back there now. But we had to use our minds. How else can we bring about the change? The vote. The vote. The prime thing in this American life, of the people, by the people, for the people. That vote. And we're doing it without demonstrating. We're doing it without mass arrests or head beatings. We're doing it slowly, day by day. Trying to vote has also forced us to raise the intellectual standard, to raise the literacy standard here, because many of the people are illiterate. They haven't had the opportunities of good schools. And so we've been forced to educate them and train them so that they can get past the voter registration tests. And just a little taste of knowledge is so sweet to them that they want more. They hunger and they thirst for it. They want to know how to read and write. They want to know how to spell correctly. They want to know how to add and subtract. And so we're beginning to set up schools for them here. The white man is reacting very badly to all of this. So far, the people, the townspeople themselves, haven't reacted violently because they've placed their confidence and trust in their police department. The police can hold them niggas in line. But we're slowly showing them that they can't hold us in line, that we're going to come forward no matter what happens, no matter what you do. This is going to come about. For most of them, I actually believe that the majority of the people here really want to see this come about. Inside, way down inside, they realize this is right. But they get into a conflict up here, this filter that reacts between the senses that bring in the world from the outside, and it filters it down to the soul. It filters the soul reaction back and up into the outside world again. This little filter that's conditioned to environment. The eyes aren't conditioned to environment. They'll just see. I mean, all right, if you live in a cave, you see in the dark a little bit better, but the eyes still just see. And the soul is not conditioned to environment. The heart is not conditioned to environment. Only the mind, that little thing in between, that id, I guess you'd call it. I'm not much of a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but it seems like this interpretive device sort of blocks them. For too long they've been taught, and they know that, well, Negroes are lazy. Negroes don't bathe too often. I'm going to talk about haircuts with this little bush I got up here. I need a bone through my nose, really. I either go African or get a haircut, or one or the other. But at any rate, these things are suddenly disproved. The intellect just doesn't quite know how to react. Nothing has been really put in its place that they can accept. All of a sudden they must accept this person as an individual that is just as good and sometimes better than I am. And they really can't do that. It's really not a human reaction. It takes a lot more to love than to hate. It takes so much more to react with kindness than to react with violence. It really calls for an exercising of the mind, the heart, and the soul in a unison, in a symbiosis that gives rise to an actual individual, instead of just to a violent beast that really doesn't mean much one way or the other. So far things have been more or less feeling their way here at this particular point. They didn't really know how to react. Would the Negroes come back again to register to vote? And we have. Would they continue coming in such a greater number? And we have. And now it's more or less, we're waiting for the white reaction. Will they react violently? Will they try to counter our moves in one way or another? We know they're going to counter our moves. We know they're going to do something, but really don't know what. If I may predict and project a bit, they're going to react violently for a while. And then they're finally going to accept it. Somebody's going to call a halt to the violence, and they're going to look around at the wreckage and begin to rebuild again, begin to piece it back together again. This is ultimately what we're working for, this coming together. And we're trying to do it politically, we're trying to do it socially, we're trying to do it without violence, but it's the whites that are actually pushing to violence. It's the whites that are actually suddenly reacting because they're also afraid that we're going to inflict on them what they know they have inflicted on us. And we're not going to. I don't want revenge. Revenge is silly. The solution to this entire problem is so maddeningly simple.